Welcome back to the channel, it's Nicola Cairncross here, and today I want to talk to you about how to write a book with no experience. That's because I'm just about to embark on my 5th or my 7th book, depending on how you look at it, and I certainly had no experience as a writer when I first started, so I wanted to just run through some of the things I've learned and some of the things that might help you get encouraged to get started, and ask for your help at the end, because I need feedback on the title. Because I'm a digital marketing coach, I'm going to show you how to do it online, and I'm going to talk a bit about how to sell it offline. The first thing to ask yourself though is, why do you want to do it? Do you want to do it to make sales? Because it's very unusual to make a lot of money as a writer, whether you're talking about a business book or whether you're talking about a novel. It's got easier over the years because I know quite a few people who, even their own mothers wouldn't describe them as brilliant writers, but they do make very good money writing romantic novels, writing erotic fiction, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of people who just literally churn out book after book after book, and after a while it starts to add up, because the more books you've got, the more people are likely to read your whole series of books. But let's say we're aiming for something that's half decent, that's going to be written fairly well, and that's going to teach people something. So from now on, I'm just going to refer to a non-fiction book, as they're called. A non-fiction how-to book, in fact, but we're going to go a little bit further than that. The reason I wrote my first book was because I wanted to leave a legacy. I wanted to leave something in a format that would survive me, that one day my children might read, which is absolutely hilarious, because although they do both read and they are known to read a book occasionally, they definitely prefer watching videos. So I'm much better to make a video and leave it on my YouTube channel than I am to write a book. But I grew up on books, I love books. The first thing I do if I want to learn anything is to buy a book. The other reason to write a book is for marketing purposes, because if you've got a business of any kind, if you write a book about your expertise or specialty, you've got it as an impressive business card, you can hand it out at things, and it makes you look more authoritative about your subject. So let's talk a bit about my first book. It was called The Money Gym. It didn't ever sell very many, but it sold steadily, and it has been described by many people as life-changing, so that's rather nice. But it would have been nicer if it had sold more. The next book I wrote was all about how to market your business better online. And that was the Business Success Factory book, because it got subsumed into another book later on. So I took what I'd written in that first book and I put it into a book called Attract 3.0, which was where I not only talked about how to market your business better online, but I gave the precise step-by-step instructions as to how I've done it with many different businesses. So that's The Money Gym, that's Attract 3.0. Then I put together a series of podcasts which were called The Business Success Factory, because I was trying to find out the secret of success in business. And I interviewed about 150, 160 people, and I found out all about their early life. I asked them 3 questions, which were, if you had to go back and tell your 18-year-old self one thing about mindset, marketing and money, what would it be? And so I turned some of those tips that they gave me, and they were all different. It was incredible. 150 or 160 people, and they all gave different tips in each of those sections. So then I took all the money tips from that and I spun it off into a book called The Money Gym, 21 Great Tips from 21 Great Entrepreneurs or something. I can't remember what the subtitle was. And then I went off on a complete tangent, and I was obsessed with success by then and what made the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people, and that is still one of my obsessions. I found out that the Science of Getting Rich, which I read and totally ignored and didn't get the first time, and then I really, really loved the second time. Obviously I'd grown up a bit since then. And then I found out it was out of copyright and you were allowed to do anything you liked with it. So I thought what I might do is rewrite it in a more modern style, so that again, my kids might one day find it on the bookshelf once mum had gone and think, oh, I'll give this a read, and I would be able to distill the wisdom of the book into language that they would understand, and examples that they would understand, and people, being mentioned in the book that they would understand. Well, it was a bit of an unmitigated disaster, because I got very bored with the project about halfway through, but couldn't bear to not finish it. So I carried on, but I think it just definitely didn't have any spark at all, really. So they're never likely to read it. And I've actually I think I've taken it off of Amazon or made it invisible or something. And then the next book was Mindset, Marketing and Money, The next book was Mindset, Marketing and Money, which is where I took all the best bits from all the best interviews from the Business Success Factory podcast, and I put them together and got the transcripts together and edited them and put them into a book called Mindset, Marketing and Money. And I actually think that's pretty good, that one. It never really sold very much, but it was all right. Now, one of my books, I can't remember which one out of all of those, actually became a Amazon bestseller in its category for about 15 minutes. And guess what? It only took 27 copies to get to that. And if I hadn't had a really kind client who screenshotted it and sent it to me, I wouldn't have known, because it was very early in the morning one morning. So that was quite funny. But now I'm starting to become obsessed with the idea of writing another book. And this time I want to do it properly. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do that a bit later on in this video. Let's go through some of the how-tos, shall we? How do you write a book? There are different ways to do it. As I've mentioned in some of my books, you can interview people and then get the interviews transcribed and turn that into a book. You could interview lots of people and get it all transcribed and then turn the best bits into a book. You can do what I did with the Money Gym, which was write your book. I think I got a series of 10 topics, and I thought about the top 10 things that people needed to know in each of the 10 topics. And then I thought about which books people should read in each of the 10 topics. And then I also thought about one person who was inspirational, or a sort of inspirational story to go with each of the topics. And that was how I did it with the Money Gym, but I sent it out as an email. So it became a 101 days. It was called hang on, it's coming back to me now. It was called Financial Intelligence 101, and it went out as a series of follow-up emails if you opted in at my Money Gym website. And it went out for 101 days, and we always joked that once you were in the Money Gym email sequence, there was no getting out, which was quite funny. But then right at the very end of it, I remember the day particularly because I was living in Spain with my husband and children then, and I ran and jumped into the pool and said, I've written the 101th email. Is that a thing, 101th? Anyway, I've written the email and I think it could be turned into a book. I met Joe and Debbie from, I think it's Lean Marketing Press now, but I don't think it was called that in those days. And I met them at an event, and I said to them, I think I've written a book. And they were at my event, so they knew that I knew a bit about what I was talking about, and they took it on. And I had to work with an editor to turn it into, from 101 emails into a proper book. And there was quite a lot of pain involved in that process, as I recall. But it's a good way to start. And the thing is, you can actually blog your book as you're writing it. It won't stop people buying it because people want everything all condensed and tidy, but it will enable you to try out your ideas on the general public if you've got any traffic coming to your blog, or you could write it on Medium. Some very famous authors have done that. Charles Dickens used to do that with his novels. He used to write them in serial form. I think they went out in a penny dreadful or something, when they sold them on the streets for a penny. And also Robert Kiyosaki did that as well with one of his books. He actually wrote it on as a series on one of his blogs, and he got feedback from people and he saw what questions they were asking. So it's a pretty good idea to do it. But people never do because they're always worried about people stealing their book. And it's like the whole idea about starting a business or having an idea for a business, it's the execution that counts, it's not the idea. So don't be scarce about it and worry that people will steal your idea. You'll probably get a better book out of it. But do it on something. You can do it on Medium, you can do it on Substack, you can do it on Beehive. And Substack and Beehive particularly mean that it goes out to your followers, and you're more likely to get people hitting reply and asking questions and giving you comments as you go if you do it on something like Substack or Beehive rather than Medium. You could just talk into a camera. You could literally spark your phone up and talk into the camera just like I'm doing now. And you could actually then get that transcribed and turned into a podcast and turned into a book if you wanted to. So if you're definitely someone who prefers to speak rather than write, then that is a very valid way of writing a book. You could structure it along the lines of, the top 10 laws or the top 10 rules or the top 10 tips. But if you do some keyword research, you can uncover the kind of title that's likely to make your book go to the top of the search engines when people are actually searching for the topic. That's the key thing. The other way you can write a book is by telling a story. Now that can either be your own story, your own personal journey, and if you've experienced something that a lot of people might go through, and you've got some stuff to share about that, then that's a really good way of doing it. But there usually needs to be some sort of structure. I remember reading books like The Richest Man in Babylon, and there's a few others like that, which really, it was a story about, people wandering about in a desert. I remember one of them. And I think there are books like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and all that sort of stuff. But those are sort of stories within stories. And I was never bright enough to get the story within the story. I was certainly never bright enough to get the story behind The Secret video or the Law of Attraction books. I always have to read them 2 or 3 times, generally with quite a few years in between, to actually get the message that those books are trying to share with you. This video is sponsored by WPExpertUK.com. You run your business, we look after your WordPress site. Basic updates and security patches or full website management, we've got you covered. Available during UK business hours, it's like having an in-house webmaster on your team for a fraction of the cost, a quick message away. Founder Nicola Cairncross has been proudly using WordPress to create the majority of her and her Clicks and Needs clients' websites for over 17 years. We know WordPress inside out. Just visit WPExpertUK.com to find out about our 3 simple price packages. And now, back to the video. A lot of people worry about how to publish. Actually, publishing has got a lot easier nowadays. It's certainly self-publishing is certainly a lot easier than trying to find yourself a publisher and an agent. I know quite a few authors who are still hanging on and not publishing their really great books. One of the things they say is they need the validation of a publishing company picking them up and publishing them, whereas their books, their books and stories are still sitting on the shelf, which is an incredible shame. How do you publish on Amazon? You go through a thing called KDP, which is Kindle Print Direct, I think it stands for. And it's actually an incredibly easy process. You have to have some things in a certain format. So for example, your PDF has to be set up in a certain way, or you can use their own software. You can copy and paste your book into their software and see how it's going to look. And then you can also use their inbuilt software to create a cover if you don't want anything too fancy, or you can hire people on Fiverr to both format your book for Kindle and also to create you a cover, although it won't be the same person. The kind of person that's good at formatting books is not the same kind of person that's good at making a cover for your book. So, the whole thing about creating a cover for your book, if it's a business book, it can be a lot plainer, and it's much more important that it jumps off the page and people are able to read the title. And then you'll also be wanting to write a description to go onto Amazon itself. You have to be really quite careful when you're setting up your book on Amazon. It's not difficult, but you can end up with Amazon choosing really random keywords to put in the title. One of my books, I think it was the latest edition of The Money Gym, when I updated it, it ended up with some really strange words in the title, and I've never managed to get Amazon to fix it for me. So it's really pretty annoying. And it makes it less likely for Amazon to show your book next to relevant books if you've got strange random keywords going on. But it's free, and you can get your book not just in Kindle version, although I would certainly recommend going for that first, but you can then do some tweaking to the format and get it selling as a paperback as well. And then the best thing of all now is that you can then read your book out loud, and you can record yourself reading your book out loud. You have to be a bit careful about background noise. If you can record it well, then you can get it onto Audible, and now Amazon and Audible have hooked up, so your book will be offered in Audible format as well, which is incredibly powerful for a business book, because about 33% of people prefer not to read, but to listen. That is a difficult job though, reading your entire book without falling asleep, I can tell you. And even worse, editing the audio is pretty bad. So I definitely used to fall asleep quite a lot when I was doing it in Greece, and it was quite hot out there, so perhaps that's why. Perhaps I'm not as boring as I think I am. Some other things to think about. I'm seriously considering writing this next book under a pen name, much as it pains me to do it, because unfortunately for me, The Money Gym got me cancelled back in 2006. everything was going swimmingly. The book was selling, the traffic was coming to the website, people were signing up for the program, the coaching program, and then I got a Google slap. They decided the Money Gym was a get rich quick book. Oh, if only it had been. Anyway, they decided that I wasn't allowed to advertise it, I wasn't allowed to talk about it, the website got no traffic. I was delisted from the search engines, and I was not able to mention the URL or the email address or anything like that on Facebook or on Google at all. And it's been like that ever since. And I think I'm a little bit concerned that all my other books have been tarred with the same brush, or that by association with me, they've sold less than they could have done. So that's why I'm thinking about doing the new book with a pen name, because I would like to start on a completely even keel, pain though it is. And some other people prefer to write under a pen name, especially if they're writing erotic fiction, for example, or even if they're writing historical fiction, which is also very popular, or sci-fi. They might have a very top-notch job, and they might not want people to know what they're doing in their spare time. So that's another reason why a nom de plume or a pen name is the way to go. Let's talk about editing. As I say, it's extremely difficult to edit your own stuff. It's very difficult to edit your own audio. It's not so bad editing your own video if you're a visual person like me, but if you're working out of your comfort zone, then it's a really good idea to start thinking about getting an editor in. The editing thing is quite interesting because sometimes an editor will go through, there's two different kinds of editor. There's an editor who works with you on your grammar, your spelling and your punctuation. And there's an editor who works with you on things like the story arc, or the whether it's a compelling story or whether it works in a certain kind of way. Now, I'm very, very keen on the StoryGrid technology, which is a podcast I started listening to because I wanted to write a sci-fi book. And I found this podcast and book called The StoryGrid, which talks about how to structure your novel so it makes the most compelling reading for your reader. And they've just recently brought out a way of formatting the big idea book, which is what kind of books we're talking about here, the Blink, Malcolm Gladwell, the micro habits, atomic habits, that kind of stuff, the 7 habits of highly effective people. All of these are big idea books. They're books that come from one big idea that that's a key or a secret or a law or something that unlocks something that people want, i.e. business success, personal effectiveness, new habits, that kind of thing. They work with that, and they've also got a publishing house, and also Sean Coyne, the guy who founded the StoryGrid publishing and the whole concept of the StoryGrid, was a very big New York editor, so he knows his stuff, and he publishes, among other people, Stephen Pressfield, who wrote The War of Art, and I think anyone will agree that that's an absolutely brilliant book that's done so incredibly well. And the person he was talking to in the podcast was a guy called Tim Grahl, who was writing his first sci-fi book, but actually turns out to have been a book marketer of some repute. Those people are all working together under the StoryGrid banner to help people become better writers by working with editors who've been trained in the StoryGrid way of editing, so that you won't end up with an editor who says, I don't like this bit, can you rewrite it, but can't explain why they don't like it and can't explain to the writer how it should be. The StoryGrid's a way of planning out your books in a way that's most satisfying to the reader, and that gives you a really well explained, well defined way of writing your books, depending on what genre it is, because each genre has different conventions, for example. So there's certain things that need to happen in a love story, there's certain things that have to happen in the most popular genre of all, which is the hero's journey. And action adventure, thrillers, spy books, they all have their own different conventions. They all have certain things that need to be there for the reader to feel satisfied when they read that book. And the StoryGrid covers all of this, so I would strongly recommend you go and check it out. So I'm seriously thinking about working with a StoryGrid author who is experienced in the whole big idea thing, and I really would love, God, that would be a real dream, to get my book published by StoryGrid Publishing, because they really know what they're doing. But if I don't, then I'll be publishing it myself, because I've done it before, I know how to do it. It's not hard, as I say, you just have to be careful about certain things, and I just have to decide whether to write it under my name or a pen name. Imagine if it did really well under a pen name though, you'd be really, really annoyed and disappointed that you hadn't used your own name, wouldn't you? one thing's for sure, you can't do your writing and your editing as you go along. It's much better to put your writer's hat on, just write, dash it all off, get it all down, and then come back and put your editor's hat on and go through it. And then you'll need someone, even if you do it really, really well, you'll need someone to go through, because there are always typos. You just don't see them. Your brain just sees the word and knows what it should be, so it doesn't see the typo. I think I did quite well in my English language and English O level, but I didn't even know what the second person writing style was. And when I turned in my first story to my writing group, they all went, "Oh, you're very brave writing in the second person." I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. Stop playing with them. Nicola Cairncross here, and I'd like to quickly interrupt this video. As you may or may not know, I have a business called Clicks and Leads Academy, which is not just about marketing your business better online, although we do cover that. It's also about becoming a better entrepreneur. So if you like the sound of that, you can come over to clicksandleads.academy. See you on the other side. So, how do I sell my book once written, edited and published on Amazon? You need to take 100% responsibility for the success of your book, regardless of whether you're publishing it yourself or whether it's going to a publishing house. That's one of the things that publishing houses look for, is does this author have a following? Do they have a mailing list? Do they have a strong Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest following? So one of the things you can do while you're writing your book is start to build your profile on social media, and you can also start to build your mailing list. And one of the ways to do that is to involve your audience. If you're blogging or emailing out to your list, or you're creating a podcast around your book, all of which I would highly recommend, then that means you're starting to build a following who's going to be ready to buy the book when it's published. And what you want to do is try and make an event around the publishing of your book. I'm pretty sure that's what I did with one of mine that got to be an Amazon bestseller on one 5-minute period on one Wednesday morning in when it was selling all of 27 copies, because it's all about how many copies you sell in a shorter space of time. So it's how many you sell in an hour, how many you sell in 24 hours, and that kind of thing. The other thing you might want to do is to look up the software Publisher Rocket, because Publisher Rocket have got a really good bit of kit that helps you find all the keywords that you can advertise your book to on Amazon. So it's an Amazon advertising training course which comes free with the software, and I think it's only about $100, the software Publisher Rocket is called, and you can get the course on what to do with it for free if you buy the software. And I highly recommend the software because it shows you lots of different related keywords that you could advertise your book under, among many other things. You can sell your book through your own website. You can sell the PDF version from your website. Amazon KDP Kindles don't stop you doing that. You can sell it through your email signature. That's a really good thing. I'm probably going to put something about my new book coming soon in my email signature, sending people through to the one burning question I want them to answer, which I'm going to ask you in a moment. And of course, Amazon then will make it available to other publishers, and you can sell abroad. You can set your territories in Amazon KDP, so you could be selling abroad, or you could also strike deals abroad. For example, I've got one of my clients who is a book publisher in New Zealand, and she often does deals direct with authors and publishers in the UK and the USA to bring books into New Zealand that she thinks the New Zealand people would enjoy. You can set up a separate website for your book, or you can sell your book from one page on your website. I've got the pages on all my website called books, in the same way that I do for podcasts, and I sell all my books from my websites. And I also would always buy the URL of the book, so that if it does go big, you've got the URL in advance, and then you can set up a separate website just for your book, which makes it really easy for people to find in the search engines, and they're much more likely to find your website, where you get 100% of the proceeds, than Amazon. I mean, Amazon's pretty good, to be fair. The split's pretty good. I can't remember it off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but you will find out when you go and do some research at the KDP website. But it's always nicer to get 100% of your profits, and you can sell your book as a PDF, and then people can actually just email it to their Kindle address, and it appears on their Kindle as a PDF, which is another reason why it's really important to make sure it's formatted correctly when you upload it to KDP. And how do you sell your book offline? Well, if you do talks, or if you get invited to do talks as a result of writing your book, then you can sell them at the back of the room. Always take someone with you to take the money. Otherwise, people will just walk off with it. You can go to other people's events and take a few copies in your bag. And if you get chatting to people and they say, you tell them about your book and they say, oh, that sounds fantastic, I must order that. Then you can just say, oh, I've got one in my bag, you can have it for a tenner, or whatever price you want to do. £5, £10, whatever. And don't forget your local bookshop. If you're an author, a new author, do take some of your books along to your local bookshop and see if they'd like to stock it on a sale or return basis, or whether they'd actually just like to buy it, because you might be able to give them better rates than they would have got from the people they get their books from normally. And the other thing is, I used to enjoy going into bookshops and just putting my book, The Money Gym, on the shelf in the personal finance section, because then people would get to the checkout and they'd say, the people would say, well, it's not on my system. And then they would realise that there was a book that they didn't know about. So that was my sneaky way of marketing it, by giving out copies and putting them on bookshelves in bookshops. So I hope this has given you some encouragement about how to write a book with no experience. But the one thing I would love you to do for me is, of course, if you enjoyed this, then do like and subscribe to the channel, because I'm always giving useful hints about how to market yourself better online as a business. And the one thing I really would like you to do is click the link in the description below to go and fill in your opinion about which is the best book title to use. And I'd love you just to choose one. And if there's a better idea that you've got for me after seeing the ones I'm considering, then there's a box for you to put in your suggestions as well. There's also a box where you can leave your email if you're interested in seeing the book. I mean, I'm probably going to send out some free review copies to people if they give me a good review as soon as it's released on Amazon. So do put your email in there. It's 100% safe. You'll end up on my mailing list, but I only send out one email a week on a Saturday morning. Easy to ignore if you're not interested in the topic. But it would be great if I could let you know when the book's out, if you've participated in choosing the title. So I hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing you on the channel again very soon.